Hello, everyone. My name is David Gibson, and welcome to Pivot 2021. Today, we are talking about big and I already messed this up. That's okay. These kinds of things happen. All right. We're talking about small and mid-sized oilfield service companies that are the pioneers in geothermal drilling. All right. So on the panel today, we've got Bo Holland here from Scientific Drilling, or Scientific, sorry.
How are you, David?
All right. Then we've also got Jenny, who from Cougar, that is a Taka company. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And then we've got Hans Walters from Full Metal Power. Thank you for being here today, sir.
Good day, everyone.
And then last but not least, Ken Miller with Erdos Miller.
Good morning, David.
Good morning. All right. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Let's be as open and just ready to flow as much as possible. And we also want to be able to tell the audience that is here watching today, we want to be interactive with you. The whole reason we're doing this live is to interact with you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them there into the little chat box and start throwing them our way. We want to be able to interact live with you guys. This is your chance to be able to talk to the experts and the people that are actually going to truly be changing the way that geothermal drilling is done in the future, because it's always done on the small scale, not the big one, the small scale. All right. So first, we'll throw it over to Bo. Bo, give us a quick introduction to who you are and your company and what y'all have been doing in the geothermal space.
Appreciate it. Thank you, David. So I'm Bo Holland. I'm a U.S. sales manager for Scientific Drilling International. We basically, we like to call ourselves the wellbore placement company. So we specialize in the technology and the services that go downhole. We really found our kind of niche in geothermal many years ago, back in the, I believe, all the way back to the 80s. So we've seen geothermal come and go from the Far East to Europe, to the US, land, Latin America, and even Canada. So it's really been a sight for us to see how it's evolved, and we're excited to see how it evolves in the future. So whether it's measurement tools, gyro tools, ranging, downhole, or even rotary steerable, we're seeing a true kind of transition into where these technologies that are traditionally oil and gas can fit into geothermal. So we're excited about that.
All right, next up, Johnny.
Thank you, David. No worries. It's a pleasure to join such an exciting event to the session with Bo, Hans, and Ken. And with a good day wishes to everyone, I am Janur Bozkurt, a hydrogeologist, and have spent more than 20 years in energy business. I have spent first half in oil and gas at geoscience departments, both on onshore and offshore areas, and the last half I've been focusing on development of geothermal projects. I have recently joined Cougar Drilling Solutions, which is a Taka company, and establishing now the Geothermal Center of Excellence of Taka as the manager of the division, which I welcome as challenging and fascinating opportunity. In line with the topic of this session, now we are integrating whole range of our services to geothermal market, besides directional drilling and performance drilling operations. So as one of the pioneers of the industry, I'm looking forward for a fruitful discussion to see how we can improve deployment of this green resource through the geothermal decade. Thank you.
And Hans, you?
Yes, good day, everyone. Thanks for having us over. My name is Hans Walters, the CEO of the company Full Metal Power. We have a long history within the aerospace, space, and automotive and the metal industry. And that's a special technology we use there. It's called Electrochemical Machining, which is a special metal machining technology. To go into the geothermal, we know that everything becomes hotter and more harsh. And we try to solve one piece of the puzzle to get that deep and get that hot. And that's by the means of electricity and chemistry to dissolve the metal very accurately. And in that way, we're now able to create a full metal power section. So by eliminating the rubber, we're now able to go beyond 170, 180 C, which is currently one of the limitations. So we really are looking forward to bring our products into what we call the ultra deep geothermal.
And Ken, round us out, please, sir.
Yeah, I'm Ken Miller. I'm the CEO of Erdos Miller. We are incredibly passionate about building the best NBD technology in the world. And, our vision is that we create incredible NBD technology, not just for oil and gas, but for mining, for river crossing HDD operations, as well as now hopefully geothermal, right? So I will say that I'm probably the least experienced person on the panel with geothermal, and I'm kind of learning along as the audience and everyone else does, but I'm incredibly excited about the future possibilities of geothermal and taking a lot of these amazing drilling technologies that the industry has just worked incredibly hard to create over the years and applying them to a new market, especially one that works really well with green industry, where a lot of the world is headed, right?
Well, thank you all for being here and giving us a quick introduction once again to the audience that's watching. We want this to be interactive. We want to be able to hear your questions, not just mine, right? I don't want to be selfish and take up all this time with my silly questions. You guys throw it out there, then it'll get fed over to me, and then I'll throw it out to them, and it'll be a lot of fun. So please be sure to ask your questions. We do look forward to it. Okay. As of right now, what are some of the biggest challenges you and your firms have faced as far as being able to enter or being able to get your technology into the geothermal space? Hans, do you want to start us off, please, sir?
Yeah, so for sure, this is an exciting technology we've been working on. The metal to metal has been a holy grail for several decades. Several have trialed and several have failed. Why will we succeed? I think the reason that we have an opportunity is that we come from outside of the oil and gas industry. And that's one of the big challenges, of course. We're not really familiar with the industry. So that's one of the challenges. But I think as our product is moving now forward and we get more feedback from the market, it will be one of the pieces of the puzzle that we can solve and get really deep and really hot.
I am Bo.
So David, right now we're pretty active in a lot of the geothermal parts of the world, but for what we see for moving forward is just the scalability of the number of opportunities. I mean, right now, the number of rigs running in just the oil and gas sector versus number that actually are running for the projects for geothermal. So as that gets to be more mainstream, as we see more and more rigs move into that, obviously the drilling potential increases, and we see that advancing not only for just what we're doing as far as people-wise, but also technologies. So,
Jenny, your turn to jump in there.
So Cougar Drilling Solutions has been designing, manufacturing, and deploying downhole drilling tools for a long time worldwide, let's say, in specific areas. But our geothermal journey has started with our strong belief on growth of the geothermal in Turkey almost like 10 years ago. While other service companies keep their focus in oil and gas business, we have transferred our experience to geothermal projects. It was a challenge those days due to background of investors of the country, mainly was not coming from oil and gas background, meaning not familiar with subsurface exploration, but we have overcome this challenge by keeping an active communication with our clients and never gave up. So up to date, we have drilled around 300 wells. In other words, maybe more than 400 kilometers of geothermal wells in Turkey and Eastern Europe. And now within the TACA, we are transferring all our knowledge gained in oil and gas to the geothermal market with well services, drilling, and also well completion, fracturing, hydraulic fracturing, coil tubing, things like that.
That's it. Again, some of the challenges that y'all faced.
Well, you know, it's really funny. I worked at Texas Instruments a long time ago making microelectronics for the automotive industry, and we thought 125C was hot, you know, about 250F or so. But you know, the ask that we're getting from our potential geothermal clients is, you know, can you guys build us, you know, NWD systems that operate at 300 degrees Celsius, right? And I mean, the big ask there is just, you know, they want to go deeper and deeper, generate more electricity, more heat, more electricity, more heating, whatever it is, right? And that's a huge challenge, right? And so, you know, as geothermal expands, oil and gas actually might massively benefit, right? Because if we're able to build 300 degrees C systems for geothermal, that's going to cover everything that oil and gas needs, right? And so, you know, oil and gas really has struggled to, like, there hasn't been enough of a market to even justify the leap from the, you know, a true leap from the standard 175 degrees C 350F technology to you know, true 200 degrees C 400F technology. But this is a whole new level past that, right? This is 300 degrees C is so much further past 200 degrees Celsius. And so, I mean, really temperature is going to be a huge thing for electronics, right? And really pushing that up there. And so I'm really excited about tackling that challenge and helping steer and measure these geothermal wells as the industry figures out how to really get the next wave of geothermal going and bring the well construction costs down and expand the viability of the market.
All right, I love this. We are now starting to get like a rain of questions in from the audience. So guys, all the audience members out there, please do not stop. Keep throwing us your questions. The harder the question, the better. All right, so we've got one here that I really like. What is unique about smaller firms that position them to lead in geothermal as opposed to the larger multinationals? And anybody can answer.
I'll jump in on that one, David, if you don't mind. It's the niche products. So it's not just geothermal. It's also, you know, coal bed methane. It's the mining, everything else. I think the smaller firms have the ability to something you've already heard it on this call already, with specialty products that are fit for purpose in an application. I think for what we've seen being a smaller firm, we've seen different technologies that we've invested in over the years have really fit the need for that space. And so I think geothermal is going to require some very specific technologies that are already being developed. And I think those guys will be able to penetrate that market at a much faster rate. Just obviously we hear agile all the time, and I think everybody on this call can talk to that. But I do think that is one of the niche products will really help us find our place in geothermal.
Yeah, I agree with that. In the past, at the start of my career, I worked for a multinational. They have large budgets and can move things. But I think the way a small entity with an enthusiastic team can move forward is extremely faster than a large multinational can do. So I think that's one of the benefits. And specifically, if you have a niche product, like you said, Bo, is the way to move it forward fast. And yeah, then at the end, you will see how that moves forward in the future.
Yeah, I also agree. I mean, I don't want to repeat the things, but the small and mid-sized companies have more chance to focus on their clients and I think individualized needs. And they have less bureaucracy and are capable to act faster. It's maybe easier for them to think out of the box. And if you look at the innovative solutions proposed to the geothermal market, it is mostly introduced by small or mid-sized firms. For instance, if you glance geothermal manufacturing price, this American-made challenges, number of the mid-sized firms are higher than the worldwide known companies. So yeah, they are actively taking their place in the geothermal market, I can say.
Ken, anything on this one that you want to jump in and say?
Yeah, I have some, interesting feelings on this one, right? So the requirements for developing downhole technology have certainly been a bit more democratized, right? Like, we started off as a small company, like 5 people shipping downhole hardware, and hardware startups are hard enough in the first place, much less downhole hardware startups, which are a whole new level from just shipping a consumer circuit board. And that used to be just the domain of like the super majors, right? Like Schlumberger, Halliburton, et cetera, who had these massive budgets. And so I think what you'll find is that you'll have a lot of startups and a very, very, very hungry, very passionate, very aggressive groups that have the means to build and deploy these technologies for geothermal, right? I think they're also just better positioned because they have a clean slate, right? Really, there's nothing stopping a major technology development firm or major oil field service firm from, what they might lack in focus or passion, they can make up for in just budget, right? Like, they can field budgets that are just, inaccessible to smaller firms, right? But a lot of the major firms are just in this position where they have, they used to be the market leaders, right? And 30 years ago or more, they put a ton of research and development into downhole tools. Schlumberger used to have a Silicon Valley R&D center where they would recruit, people from all sorts of different Silicon Valley companies to get them to work on really cool oil and gas projects. But all of the major technology companies or major service providers have just been battered by wave after wave after wave of these oil and gas downturns, right? And so they've just been holding on and rebuilding and holding on and rebuilding, and reinvestment into new tech has really been sunset by just keeping whatever is still working and making money working. And they're still dealing with that. They're dealing with that legacy, right? Versus someone who has a brand new clean slate and so go after things, right? And then, we're at the dawn of a new market right now, right? And there was a lot of companies that are trying to figure out how to drill these geothermal wells, effectively, right? And there's a lot of these competing loop technologies and all this kind of stuff. And honestly, the best financial play for a large company right now might not be to get in and fund themselves, but might be just to watch the market and see who wins and then buy the winner. That could just be the smarter economic play for them. And so, I don't think that they can't do it. The question is like, should they, right? And so, but I always support the extremely hungry, passionate entrepreneurs to build all sorts of cool stuff, right? So I think that the larger companies should embrace this and partner or buy the firms that do the best in this wave of new technology development.
I love that response. I as myself, I think that you see a lot of the large major companies in the position that they're in is because they purchased a lot of smaller companies, right? Halliburton still carries the legacy name Sperry. Schlumberger still carries Dow or Anadril or GeoWestern. So a lot of big companies are made up of smaller companies. So the smaller companies are usually ones that push the envelope and take on more risk. And so that's why it's my belief that in this new frontier, and it really isn't a new frontier, but this new wave of momentum will definitely come from the smaller companies. And Bo, I know that we had talked about prior, and I want to be able to get your thoughts on this, is kind of some of the stuff that Ken talked about there as far as the investment and the ability to be able to put R&D money into these projects. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it really boils down to focus and where the need is. So for us personally, I mean, we obviously have a large presence in the drilling sector, right? But the measurement side of it is where we tend to gravitate towards in the past. I mean, when you start looking at what it takes to bring out a new motor, what it takes to bring out a new MWD, new rotary steerable, and then the biggest thing for us is just putting them all together. So from a geothermal's perspective, we're watching what some of these kind of outside the fairway of the normal geothermal projects, whether it be the closed loop system I've heard discussed already, some of the technologies those are going to need, and that's where we're putting our money. We're taking the investment we have and we're focusing on accuracy. We're focusing on wellbore placement. We're focusing on efficiency. And I think some of those overlap, and that's what's best for us in 2021. Where can you find that place that overlaps the geothermal, the coal bed methane, the oil and gas, and put your resources to play there that will help you not only for just advancing geothermal, but also some of these projects that really will take, I mean, the closed loop system is very interesting to us right now. We're really watching that and seeing how that takes off, because that allows, again, what I talked about in the beginning, the scalability of this field. Once geothermal can cross a certain number of rigs, I think a lot more people will be able to enter into that, able to spend money and invest in that arena.
Hans, are you feeling the same way? Do you think that as soon as we hit a certain threshold that a lot more of this will start to make sense for other companies? I mean, obviously you guys are already here.
Yeah, sure. I think what you see is look, where the large companies are sometimes with new technologies have to start from scratch. We had a long history within this machining technology to come to a real product within this industry. So we really stepped out of all the other industries where we worked for, the aerospace and the space. We really moved into this side. And the reason for it is that we really were able to make a difference with this metal to metal power section. And for that reason, we have selected this as where to go. And yeah, that really gives us a huge head start. Yeah.
Dave, if I can add one more thing, right? So
Yes, go ahead, sir.
All right. So we've seen a massive shift here in oil and gas, right? Because I'm not going to do timelines because I'll just show how little I know, but we had the shift from conventional plays to unconventional plays in oil and gas, right? And so conventional plays is looking for large reservoirs, using tons of science to guide us through, et cetera. And then 10 or more years ago, we cracked shale, right? And drilling became, instead of this one-off, masterpiece of a wellbore in the ground to produce a lot of oil out of a conventional reservoir, it became factory drilling, right? Like drill the same shape in a shale play, move the rig over 30 feet, do it again and again and again and again, right? And so one more, besides just being battered by these waves of downturns, a lot of the major companies that became dominant, like Schlumberger, Halliburton, Weatherford, et cetera, they were so well set up for those conventional plays, and they had all of their R&D money spent building tools for those plays, right? And when the factory drilling kind of came around, it was with the lesser requirements and the lower cost operating and all this kind of stuff. It was the smaller and mid-sized companies that absolutely dominated it and still dominate it today, right? And the next wave of geothermal is going to have to be a lot more like shale drilling than conventional drilling to be cost effective, right? Like we're going to have to figure out how to build closed loop systems fast, cheap, that last for a long time and generate a lot of power, right? And so they can learn a lot, from shale and shale, drilling, and shale drilling can probably learn a lot from them.
Jay, I want to have you jump in on this one, but I want to throw out a stat real quick for everybody, for people that don't know. Of all the footage drilled in the state of Texas over the last 12 months, only 14%, 14% of that is done by the majors. That's Schlumberger, Baker Hughes, and Halliburton. Weatherford no longer even drills in the state of Texas, right, as far as a directional drilling company. So you can see that 86% of all the total footage drilled in Texas is done by the small and independent companies. So there is data that backs up the statements of what Ken was just talking about. Okay, back to you. Just wanted to throw that stat out there real quick.
So I think it's a little about the commitment to carry out transferring all the experience you gained through the years to development from oil and gas to geothermal resources. I mean, the focus should be where you see the value is, to carry out the innovative solutions to be part of achievement of scaling the geothermal utilization. So it's same for TECA. I mean, it's in line also with the title of the session. TECA has been transforming itself and growing its technical abilities by acquiring technology companies and expanding the international presence. So we cannot do everything ourselves, but we appreciate the strength of the collaboration.
All right, so we have one more. By the way, we've got tons of questions coming in. I'm going to apologize now because I didn't think there would be this many questions, and we're probably not going to get to all of them. But thank you all for being active with the conversation here and asking your questions. And I'm going to do my best to get to as many of them as I can. And I'll just start telling the panelists to shut up. Right. All right. So where's the one I want to ask? Okay. Where are you seeing cash flow coming from in the very near term for these developments? Are you going after grants?
I'm going to venture a guess that there will not be a lot of cash flow from geothermal coming in the near future, and that people are going to have to go find a way to fund it and take a gamble on it.
Fair enough.
I mean, there's, we haven't figured out how to do this properly, right? So there's not going to be lots and lots of cash from operating businesses doing this, right? People are trying to figure out how to drill these incredibly complicated closed loop systems on shoestring budgets, right? Because they are startups right now, and they are trying to make every dollar go as far as they can, right? So this is the time for, investors to get into the next thing and make their bets on the entrepreneurs and the technologies and companies, but it's all going to be investment money. It's not going to be anything from like an operating business like oil and gas.
So most probably this should be a parallel discussion. I mean, okay, we are trying to do something to deploy, utilize more geothermal resource, but it's not only the technology, but there is the side of a need also is change in the financial mechanisms. The European Union is setting in force some innovative projects and funding them, and there are some other institutions trying to fund innovative applications or supporting R&D searches. But there are still very limited. And that's why, I mean, without changing the financial mechanism, it will be difficult to see really the energy transition, and carry geothermal to a scalable and comparable to the other renewable energy sources will be a bit challenging.
Yeah, I think for these kind of companies, it is a challenge. Like I already mentioned, the large entities have unlimited budgets, and the small entities are really depending on some initial fundings, subsidies, etc. But at a certain point, if you move into some cash flow, like we have currently, we all bring back to further development to bring it to even the next level and introduce new models and new sizes. And that's where that spinning wheel needs to start turning. But yeah, you often also see that with the small entities, if you don't create a cash flow, then maybe a big and giant idea that might have been available for the future is just dying.
And David, it was a really good question, because it's something that I think that most small firms do try to, that's kind of what keeps them up at night, is where are your development dollars going to come from? I think for us, as far as geothermal, oil and gas has afforded us the opportunity to be able to invest in technology to allow us to pursue geothermal markets. That being said, you look at some of what our technologies, they're self-sustaining when it comes to like Case Toll Services International, they're self-sustaining simply through the geothermal markets. So for us, we have looked at grants. We do have technology ideas. We've kind of hit some dead ends along the way. Just, you know, there's a lot of talk around obviously grants and grant money and partnering and projects, but then they all seem to lead to somewhat of a dead end. So I think that's definitely a challenge for smaller firms to navigate, is exactly who to talk to, where to talk to, and how to talk to them, and how to present your ideas to allow you to advance. So we're definitely interested in seeing where that goes in the future.
Well, thank you, panelists, for answering this. And once again, thank you to the audience. You guys keep your questions coming. We're getting some really good ones, and y'all are making my job a lot easier. Here's one for you guys. What are you hearing from your customers on needs for geothermal projects over the coming years? What problems are they coming to use with specifically?
Yeah, I think I can say, sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Tell Bo to be quiet.
The most significant one is about adapting. I mean, there are similarities between oil and gas and geothermal, but there are also differences. So the questions and the expectations is based on those differences, like high temperature, high pressure environments. So we need to work on the subsurface engineering, evolve in that area. We should be able to perform a more commercialized drilling operations or imaging operations under this challenging environment. This is the most significant thing that we have been in questions, let's say, during the studies.
Yeah, for us, it's more or less in the same field. It's all about temperature, going to hotter, deeper, more harsh conditions. And that's what we focus on with the rotors and the stator, specifically to be able to handle these temperatures up to 400 C maybe, and even beyond. And then specifically for power sections, for motors, and also a lot of questions about how will we pump it up. And so also for pumps, metal to metal, also to withstand these harsh conditions down there.
For us, it's
paper, rock, scissors.
I'll jump in, Dave. But for us, it's all about NVD, right? So 300 degrees Celsius is the degrees Celsius. I keep doing that, but 300 Celsius is the ask, right? So like that is a long road to get there. But 300 C directional modules, pulsars, gamma sensors, and active and passive magnetic ranging, right? So like I mentioned before, like gamma is going to be somewhat helpful. I doubt we'll need full LVD tools, but getting all that operating at the temperatures that geothermal wants cost efficiently and reliably is a massive engineering challenge.
Oh,
and David, for us, we're seeing kind of an emergence of two different style geothermal projects. Obviously, one's the thermal reservoirs, and then one's the reservoirs that will build the thermal capacity, but don't have the same requirement that Ken was kind of hitting on with the 2-3, so odd Celsius requirement. So a lot of what we already have right now, that 165, 175 C, a lot of that technology works around the world when it comes to the downhole drilling side of it. What we're seeing is people ask about rotary steerable. They're asking about efficiency. I think Ken hit on it earlier with with where the industry has to go around factory drilling. They're asking for how can they get these wells straighter, better in the ground, better placed, everything else. And then the flip side of that, where we do see the temperature requirement is around the production side of it. Obviously, Case Toll Services for us internationally is a completely separate business unit than what we see in the US. And it's a pretty large segment for us. We've built some tools that, go up in that 600, 650 degree F kind of scenario. So we see a lot of that when it comes to kind of understanding what's going on downhole from a production standpoint, but also flipping the script. We're starting to see more requests. I think Ken hit on it with passive and active ranging, connecting well bores, this closed loop system, this bringing geothermal into an environment that not necessarily have the thermal requirements that we see in the more traditional geothermal.
So for each of you, as you have embarked into the geothermal space, or coming from, you know, Hans, like you said, from the aerospace side, and as you've started to look at the geothermal industry and the drilling, what was one of the, you know, kind of like either eureka or kind of like shocking moments for you, was thinking like, okay, this can work in this application, or if we just did this, there's low-hanging fruit just there in front of us?
No, I think there was the momentum was somewhere in 2013, 2014, when we worked for one of the majors in the industry. They asked us to develop an electrochemical machining process to machine stators. And so we built a demonstrator machine, and that was very successful. And they had been shopping around through the world, and they said, hey guys, what you're able to do, nobody can do it. And so that was for us the momentum that we thought, okay, this is a unique thing. And we did a lot of research and development for the other industries, but we had there really the momentum that we thought, okay, this is an interesting industry to move into. And then later on, from the even wall, we moved to the metal to metal, and that's our full focus right now, because we believe that, yeah, with metal to metal, we're able to go real deep, and that's the full focus, yes. So it was already a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah, Hans, Hank, it's a little easy for you guys because you guys have always been developing the right technology for geothermal, right? So, but Dave, I mean, I'll say the low-hanging fruit is that we can take a lot of technologies that exist in oil and gas today as they are, no modification, no retraining of the crews, and they can go right to a geothermal well and start working, right? Like that, like the tools are directly applicable, especially for temperatures which the tools already exist. Shocking side of things, 300 degrees Celsius is a hard ask. That is a lot of R&D work. That is challenging physics and semiconductors and seals and everything else for sure, right? And it is something that has mostly eluded oil and gas for its entire history. I mean, there's plenty of Sandia, National Labs, DOE studies, all this kind of stuff, trying to build, a lot of these studies, you go and read them and they'll say, oh, we were shooting for 300 degrees Celsius, but we gave up at about 225. Right, with some of the best materials and technologies and scientists in the world, right? So that ultimate ask of 300 Celsius is a shocking challenge. It's going to be really fun to knock out.
Yeah, but also I think it's not just limited with the drilling and related services. For instance, even for the seismic or other monitoring processes during the exploration, it's also challenging. You need to change your way of looking from oil and gas, because yes, you're looking for a fluid, but for a different point of view. So it is also one of the challenging areas that we need to focus on.
So David, for us, low-hanging fruits, obviously was similar to what has been said already, the transition from oil and gas, but RMRS, the rotating magnet, is something that you would have never thought to be deployed in a geothermal application. It was, largely for intercepts, P&A, SAGD markets, so the traditional gas and oil markets and it's really seen a lot of lately within the last like 6 months, a lot of interest around that RMRS. So I think that's for us personally. We've been in it since, like I said, the 80s, even as far back as the late 70s. So geothermal has been kind of our fabric this whole time, but we've really seen an insurgence of that to say, okay, these are technologies built that were very specific, very for certain oil or gas applications, and now geothermal is getting the benefit of that. So it's definitely going to be low-hanging fruit for us on that side.
So we've got an amazing question here to be able to predict the future. Do any of the panelists have opinions about where this market will be in, say, 2030 or 2040, and rig count? What do you think it might be?
I want to tell something. I think my personal belief is that, of course, oil and gas have brought us a lot, but also a lot of challenges environmentally. And personally, I believe this whole geothermal can be a huge solution for CO2 reduction, etc. And we personally want to introduce our piece of the puzzle to solve our small piece. I think within 20 years, 30 years, rig count, yeah, maybe 20%, 25%, could even be more. I heard even numbers up to 50. But this will have a serious impact, and it is a real pivot, as session is also called.
You mean 50 total in 30 years?
50%.
More.
Yeah. You think more?
No, I'm asking you, what's the number you're saying?
50% of the drilling, so 50% of our energy consumption could come from geothermal.
Worldwide?
Worldwide.
Okay.
Ken, what's your number?
No, I'm with Hans. I mean, for there to be a market and for this to really take off, I mean, you know, closed loop construction and all the materials and all the rock breaking techniques and measurement and ranging and everything have to enable a market that results in hundreds of geothermal rigs working 24/7, right? Like that has to happen. We have to be bullish on it. We have to push aggressively. If we go from 20-ish rigs here today to 50 rigs in 2030, that will be a massive disappointment, and there will not really have been a new wave, right? And so it has to become a massive market.
Correct.
May I step in, David?
Well, of course.
Well, I mean, I think we are in the final exit to heal this broken planet. So if you look at geothermal, it's a unique baseload energy resource and will play an important role to meet this energy demand for a sustainable future. So that's why I don't see really now another option besides acceleration of the utilization of this resource, because it doesn't only generate power, you can use it for many several applications, various applications. It has various side benefits. So that's why I believe we will see a huge accelerated graph through the years, and yeah, why not 50%?
So David, guessing the rig count is a fun thing, especially when you're live on the record and somebody can go back and coach you. So as far as the US goes,
I'm recording this now.
As far as the US specific goes, I think, you know what, right now we see the number of geothermal rigs, it's less than that, 5% of the oil and gas. I think the bigger question that we're trying to ask ourselves is not how many rigs will be, drilling geothermal in 2030, but which governments around the world will embrace geothermal. That's really the thing, is what markets do you need to be in? Where will you need to mobilize tools? What are the challenges of mobilizing tools into those areas? Where are you already, and everything else? So I think when you're talking about how does a mid to small size firm pivot from traditional big oil into geothermal, it's a matter of where are you and where do you want to be, and which governments around the world will be the most likely ones to embrace, fund, and develop and see that rig count grow.
But Bo, forgive my ignorance. I'm just a technology gearhead. Why do we need governments to embrace the technology?
I think it's going to be the policies that are put in place around the world through those governments. I think those policies will drive how much activity is there, either whether it's the traditional regions around, or either some of the technologies that allow us to drill geothermal in places that haven't seen geothermal activity in the past.
Are you suggesting that subsidies are required, or to compete with the traditional drilling?
I don't think it's subsidies so much, Ken. I don't think it's investment directly from governments. I think it's the policies in which the government's put in place that either attract, allow, or contribute in some way to how people invest in those areas.
Okay.
I'm thinking largely Latin America, Canada, those places like that we see, we know the potential is there. It's going to be, what happens in the next few years that allows a breakthrough for 2030, 2040?
Well, I think geothermal is an easy initiative every government should support, but that's just me.
Is there the potential we could see a large migration of all of the US land drilling rigs to other places in the world where geothermal reservoirs are more financially viable. They're shallower and they're hotter.
That's actually a good question. I think we've seen that.
That's why I asked it, Bo.
We've seen that specifically in the western part of the U.S. is the same rigs that are capable of drilling oil and gas are actually, put them on a truck, move them out west and rig them up. There are some tweaks and everything else. I'm sure the rig contractors are rolling their eyes right now, the ones that are online. But I do think that, yes, you have a good point, is that you can use some of the activity that's already there. However, I do think that, fit for purpose to be able to move in and out of some of these regions is going to be a challenge.
Well, I mean, I would say that oil and gas and continue to be symbiotic, right? And they'll continue to, benefit from technology that's developed from the other, right? Oil and gas, deeper, faster, more automation, break up more rock, all those technologies will be directly transferable. And oil and gas is really going to enjoy the high temperature technology that comes out of geothermal, right? And so I think that, geothermal can probably largely leave the rig problem to oil and gas and then just contract those rigs, and they need to go solve the specific geothermal drilling downhole subterranean problems.
I'm being told here in the comment section that US has some of the best geothermal resources in the world.
Well, I mean, not only that, but I think a large goal of the new closed loop systems is to really broaden which geothermal plays, if you will, are viable, right? I mean, I think right now we're looking for some very hot rocks, and I think, a lot of the goal is to, be able to put a lot more power stations where, there's less hot rock and take advantage of that.
True. All right, so another question here from our audience. Thank you guys for asking all the questions that you're doing. What partnerships are needed? Seems like a big set of problems for even an army of small companies with limited resources to do on their own.
I think the market will do its job. So the reality is often if you have a big issue within the industry, you have a lot of, like you just said, a big group of small entities. And probably there will be a major and just cherry pick all the tools he needs to make it big himself. So probably that's one of, and that happened in the past, or you have one of the small entities that really becomes real big, and then we'll solve one of the problems. But I think what you have seen in the history is that, like you already mentioned, like Schlumberger or one of the others, they just buy the smaller entities.
I think the geothermal pioneers need to find the right technology partners and have them develop extremely focused technologies, right? Like there is so many problems to solve to make these truly viable. And, it's really going to be a lot of work from a lot of different companies, and no one's going to be able to raise enough money to solve the problems themselves internally 100% organically. And so it just lots and lots of economic and technology development partnerships between the people who are trying to figure out how to make the technology and the equations work, and the people that can actually provide that technology and services to the new geothermal well construction industry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Each firm, based on their various capabilities, for sure, will have different strategies, and based on the solutions they create, definitely there will be a buyer in the market.
So David, the easy answer for us is always, the answer between OFS and operators, right? Whether it be an oil and gas operator, geothermal operator, that's always the partnership we're looking for. But also what we're seeing basically in the last couple of years, where is the rig of tomorrow going, and trying to figure out which parts and pieces of the downhole tools need to equate to the rig. And I know that Ken and I talked about this offline some odd times ago, not necessarily related to geothermal, but just understanding what's available tomorrow and where that rig is going to go to be able to align with that. So I think it's more alignment than it is partnership, but obviously it's definitely what we're looking for.
Hey, David, I'll tell you what I refuse to do.
Yeah.
I refuse to bring the WITS Zero technology along with us in the geothermal.
Thank you, sir. I
Sorry.
appreciate that.
A little bit of drilling technology.
Indemnity humor. All right. So apparently there's some pushback on the closed loop system in the comment section to Kenneth.
I'm sure.
even thermally conductive enough to support a closed loop system? And feel free to anybody to jump in on this one.
I have no idea. I am not designing a closed loop system. I am just standing by to make the equipment to drill them. So that is not the problem I am personally trying to solve. And I am not a rock or metal or just physicist or whatever, right?
What is the person that figures that part of it out? I wonder what their job title is.
I think Hansank would have a better answer than I.
Thanks for that. Actually, I don't really have a good answer on that as well. We had a lot of discussions with specialists and high educated people from the field. And I think there is a field that says yes, and you have a field that says no. Personally, I'm more on the yes side, but not driven by any proof. I think that's something we will have to explore downhole. On the other hand, if you think in the opposite way, we try to cool down a certain area in the earth, and it's so hot around, you will always have temperature going to that direction, and we're just extracting joules from there.
I saw several posts on LinkedIn that said, "Oh, here's the basic math that proves that closed loop geothermal will just never work," and that really drives me a bit nuts because I mean, if it was that simple and we understood physics and the world around us that well, and we could just save hundreds, if not thousands of millions of dollars, billions of dollars of investment trying to figure it out in the real world, that I think we would just say, oh no, it won't work. Look at the equations, just basically not going to work, right? So like you can line up the math and do modeling and guess at coefficients and make any story you want, right, to support or to deny, right? But what we're going to find here is that there's, like I said, there's a lot of pioneers, right? There's the Ever guys, and there's a lot of guys like them that are out there trying to make this work, right? And I don't think that they're convinced that the math on its plain face says closed loop will not work, obviously, or they wouldn't have founded a company to go try and build it, right? Now, will it work ultimately? I don't know. The beautiful thing about drilling is that you can have all the hype and salesmanship and relationships in the world, and it doesn't matter. You put things in the ground and physics will be your judge, right? But I think it's worth trying, and I think that we understand little enough about the true nature of physics to say to not just write this off with some simple napkin math and say it's not going to work.
But Ken, don't you think if you're able to go to the 300C and you extract that heat for a long time, and even it goes down to 200, it will still generate a lot of energy, but you will never cool it down to room temperature, for instance. So you will always be able to extract that heat, and the earth will feed it.
It sounds promising to me. I'm extremely excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some good demonstration projects, sorry, for the power generation, but closed loop can also maybe a good solution for heating and cooling applications. Yeah. I mean, we don't need to focus ourselves only to power generation. So for the heating and cooling in shallower depths, it can provide a nice solution for the energy consumption.
That's also a great. We don't have to generate electricity. There's lots of other things that power can do, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to say, I mean, there's still, even in this day and age, we still drill dry holes in oil and gas. So there is the potential that even if the math, the technology, and everything else is done right, they still could have gotten the prediction of the reservoir incorrect. And that resulted in something not working. It's not so much because of the math, but
we don't even understand the basics of what works and what doesn't in oil and gas, because we can't even have a debate and pinpoint like what's actually working, right? There's still some, even after more than 100 years of continuous process and technological sustaining and improvement, there is still so much guesswork or just luck or anything else that just goes into oil and gas operations. So I mean, it's just onward to the frontier, I say.
So they're asking about the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, all the technology is developed by humanity, right? And when we are babies, approximately statistically, we fell 200 times to learn how to walk. So a couple of dry wells in a field, or trying to understand better how the physics works and how I can develop and improve the system will definitely happen. I mean, in the end, we just need to keep supporting and believing in it. We need to stay at the positive side of the discussions.
I agree with you.
Oh, do you want to jump in on this one before I interrupt everybody again?
No, I think our position is the same as Ken's. I mean, we're not the team to tell you it will or will not work. We're the team to find the technology, develop the technology, build it and deploy it that allows you to do what you want to try. That's simple.
Give us your design parameters and we'll make it. Somebody's asking, what's the abbreviation we keep using? NDVB, I think it was MWD, measurement while drilling.
I can't not jump in, but NWD, measurement while drilling, is the practice of measuring the wellbore as we construct it, right? So we build these systems that are battery powered, electronics, wireless transmitters. We deploy them underground with our steering and drilling instrumentation, such as mud motors, rotary steerable systems, or bits, and they tell us where we're going, right? And so if we want to drill, a closed loop system that's just a U shape, or that has a lateral that connects, we need to be able to measure that shape as we drill it. And an NWD system is the system that does that for us.
Yeah, there is no subsurface GPS or satellites or.
Unfortunately, rock, radio considers rock to not quite be transparent, right? So unfortunately, we cannot just inherit the GPS signals that are broadcast from space. They bounce right off the ground. That's why you lose your radio or your GPS when you go through the tunnel.
There we go. Even when you're playing Grand Theft Auto, you lose satellite signal there.
That is, and that's awesome. I didn't know they put that detail in the game. That's really cool.
All right, guys. So going forward, what more information do you need from geothermal operators or geothermal pioneers to be able to continue help developing what you're going to be doing as far as your future business plan and business model?
I'm jumping in again, Dave. We need honest minimum viable product specifications, right? Like 175C is the state of the art of oil and gas tools right now. 300 degrees C is really far away. Like, that is remarkably hard to do. So what we need to know is, what is the next minimum step that we can take, and just start taking those steps, right? So where can we go and produce more geothermal energy with the tools we have today? And then the next increment and the next increment of those tools, because we have to start walking down a roadmap to get to where we ultimately want to be. I am a huge believer in minimum viable product approach. I think it's the only thing that's ever made the world work. I think that the oil and gas industry is a giant MVP experiment and has been from the beginning. And if we try to go for the end goal right now, that alone will kill the project, much less the actual physics of rock thermal conductivity or whatever else. So very, very practical, realistic expectations from the geothermal pioneers to the equipment manufacturers of what the next step is.
I think the first thing is to be a bit open-minded and provide valid support, and don't see geothermal as a competitor. I mean, we are on the same boat, and we, through the years, always find a solution to the problem of generating the energy. And geothermal is a unique resource. So what they can do is what I need to see from the developers, operators, even from anyone, any stakeholder, is to create some data sharing platforms and to assist us to repurpose oil wells, for instance. Only all together we can present a positive impact. So whatever they can support, whatever they can give, it should be an open environment for all of us, and we should be all one voice.
I would say on that, somebody had asked earlier if I could provide a Gibson reports for all of the geothermal wells. And so, yeah, if there's open and transparency as far as what wells are being drilled, I would happily put together a report and put it out there for free so everybody could know, making it a little bit easier to understand what the actual market size and viability is there. So Hans, down to you. What things are you looking from, or what do you need to know from the pioneers and developers out there in the geothermal space?
I think we have two products. One is the motor/power section side. We only provide a power section regarding the motor. There we're just driving our own designs and bring that to the market. I think the opposite side, so when the flow needs to really flow, what will be the sizes of the pumps you will need, what kind of pressures, how will it look downhole, what are the expectations there, longevities, etc. I think the questions for us from the market to get that data is more on the pump side than on the power section side.
And David, I think the answers have been very well covered. I mean, when it comes to technical spec, exactly, realistic expectations is exactly how we see it. You know, what do you need realistically to be able to achieve tomorrow's goal, and then build from there. From the business side of it, we talked about earlier with partnerships and everything else, just an understanding of how many rigs are going to be out there is an equation that we're all trying to figure out. How big is this market? What does it need to do? How much do we need to invest today to be able to take advantage tomorrow? But the last one is the quintessential, you know, communication. Reach out to us. Reach out to the people that are the small and mid-sized firms. Look us up online. Connect with us through social media. But bring us into the conversation. That we want to be a part of that. We want to serve the industry. We want to see geothermal advance. I think everybody on this call is excited about what geothermal will be in the next few years. So it's definitely make us a part of the conversation. Communication is probably the most important.
Great point there, which is, please, for anybody out there that is watching, all of these individuals are active out there on at least LinkedIn, social media, and they all do have websites. So if you have more questions, or if you have some of the questions that we didn't get to today, because we are nearing the end of our time. So if you do have any final questions, be sure to throw them out there. But be sure to link up with these people on LinkedIn or any of their other social media platforms. They're not hard individuals to get a hold of, or if you need to, you can always get a hold of me, and then I can put you in touch with the right person as well. Let's be able to continue to have this conversation, not just in this forum, but online in a public space as well, and then in private, and being able to start bringing in some of these companies to be able to continue doing more work. Okay. We have another question here. We're all about reducing cost of geothermal at this conference across all the sessions. Will the technologies be at low enough cost to sustain geothermal work?
That's the question, man.
Exactly. That's the question.
That's what we all got to figure out. We all just got to go work really hard and see if we can get it done, you know?
Well, the question of the question is, where is it today? You know, I mean, obviously there's projects that are viable around the world, and the cost structure and how it exists. It's changing every day. Our cost structure changes as the requirements change. So we definitely think it will be. We see it already. And so we see it definitely advancing.
And is it not only the question about comparing how much energy you will get out of the ground if you pump so many barrels of oil compared to so many megajoules of energy out of the field from a geothermal well? We also have to consider the environment, and these costs should also be included, especially if you look into the future. That's also a big cost saving that you will make with geothermal compared to oil and gas. So even drilling the same amount of energy out of the ground compared in hydrocarbons compared to joules, I think we also need to consider what is happening above us with the CO2 emissions, etc.
Yeah, and also if you look at from a broader point of view, at one day I believe yes, but meanwhile things can work in parallel, and we can still reevaluate the oil fields for producing geothermal with the high oil water cuts, for instance. The infrastructure is already there, so we can repurpose those wells, and meanwhile do the R&D studies and the innovations and try to make it more commercial and acceptable. But from the broader point of view, we need it because we need to keep the heating of the world in some degrees if we still want to live on Earth.
Dave, I'm going to...
So go ahead, Kit.
I was going to add to my sarcastic answer, which is, look, it's incredibly hard to predict breakthroughs, right? If 30 years back in oil and gas, and you told me or told anyone that was operating then what the statistics were for the number of rigs operating today in the United States and the amount of millions of barrels of oil that we're producing, they would not believe you. They would not have believed that level of output and efficiency was technologically possible. Maybe 10% would believe you. The optimists, right? 90% of people would have said, you're insane. You have no idea what you're talking about. I joined the industry in 2009-ish, right? To me, from my perspective, drilling a 4 to 5 hour curve in this industry is insane, right? And so you can have these years and years and years of perseverance and technological improvement really change from a like a slight growth slope to a hockey stick. You know, it can just take off when you hit these breakthrough points, right? You know, walking rigs. I mean, we take that technology for granted, but I remember sitting 10 years ago listening to NOV talk about, oh, you know what, we're drilling these shale wells on pads. Maybe we should make rigs with feet or tracks that like walk over, right? I mean, it's crazy what oil and gas has been able to do. I don't see why similar breakthroughs couldn't be achieved where oil and gas to where, you know, things that may just see unapproachable today or completely cost prohibitive, you know, we're only, you know, honestly, it's going to be years of elbow grease and some nice breakthroughs away from making it really practical, right? But as far as predicting ultimately if it will ever happen or when, well, then you go back to the joke of like, what's the difference between a technologist and a billionaire, right? A technologist knows what technology is coming in the future. A billionaire knows when it's coming.
Fair enough. I will say this, after conversations with Fred Dupree, so this is not my own information, this is information that I learned from him, is that as far as reducing costs on geothermal drilling wells, one of the things that they did and they realized is to be able to help reduce the cost was just drilling processes in general. So for example, when they are tripping out a hole, the rig that they were using in this specific geothermal drilling application didn't have a way to be able to rack back pipe. So every joint of pipe had to be unscrewed and then lay down out the V-door. This is a very cost prohibitive procedure. So this is, you know, it's funny, there's Dr. Teodoro from University of OU, and he says that, you know, most drilling rigs shouldn't be called drilling rigs, they should be called tripping rigs because they spend more time tripping pipe than they do drilling. And in the application that was told to me from Fred Dupree, that was even more so the case, that, you know, proper weight on bit, proper drilling practices, proper, you know, back to bottom, just some of the things that we take for granted, or as we would say is basics, or things that we've started to really be able to optimize in the oil and gas space, are not being done whatsoever in the geothermal space. And so I think not only is it a technology thing, but there's also a lot of processes and procedures that could be carried over. So my question back to you guys is that, have y'all seen similar any of a similar nature, where it's not just the technology that's moving forward, but it's also the processes and procedures that we need to be able to educate the parallel industry in?
I don't see a difference between technology and processes. That is just a different form of technology. You know, when my son was born, he was born 3 months premature, born at 28 weeks. And if he had been born 30 years ago, his chances of survival would have been much lower than they are today, right? But all the same machines and most of the same automation was available 30 years ago for him, right? But what had improved was the process technology and how they handle premature newborns and what processes, and they don't give them 100% oxygen. They've learned all this kind of stuff. And so, I mean, we don't typically think of that as technology because it's not a piece of software or a circuit board, but that is know-how, and that is technology to a great extent, right? So I don't see much of a difference. And I think that once again, both industries can be symbiotic to each other there because they have similar intentions of reducing well construction cost.
Yeah, no doubt we see it the same way, David. I mean, it's you talk about technology and you want to, you know, brand yourself as this technology company, but it's really the people that stand behind it. And for us, it's the being in the service side of it, but you know, the OFS is the actual service, not necessarily the technology, not necessarily the downhole provider, but the guys, the men and women that go out every day, and especially the from a navigation standpoint, the directional drillers. So what we've learned as far as from a people aspect and transitioning that into geothermal will definitely help the geothermal market. I think that's been a trend of this whole hour, is how do they help each other back and forth? And we're definitely seeing that not only today, but even the last few years as things advance around the world, we've been able to take them back and forth.
It's more than the technology. Also, I think it's about choosing the right technology and engineering methodology to use in your project. So at your example, for instance, David, yes, there are drilling rigs, there are tripping rigs. So we already know it. We know what we lose by tripping rigs. So why keep investing in tripping rigs where the drilling rigs already discovered, for instance? So pick up the right technology, the right methodology, and right engineering, and follow up that application to make it more approachable.
Hans, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, maybe just one small comment. I think what we currently see is that we have a geothermal and we have the oil and gas industry. And I think as soon as we see it as an energy industry where we merge the technologies and really bring in the knowledge and the know-how from the oil and gas to the geothermal, then you're really able to bring it up to a higher level and benefit from what is already learned within oil and gas.
All right, with our last few minutes remaining here, I want to be able to give each one of you the opportunity, put out there, what's one last thing that you would like to be able to say to the audience from your perspective on what we can do or what we should be doing or what we should be thinking about, whatever that final message is that you would like for everybody to know about before we close out here. And Bo, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna finish it off with just thank you, and for everybody that tuned in, for everybody that took the time to out of your schedule to actually participate. I think for us, that's the conversation has to start. It has to evolve. It has to grow. I've said it before, and then we can say it again. But I mean, obviously, communication is between the operators and the investment community, between the different cycles or sides of the service sector, the technology providers. I'm looking forward to seeing where it comes in my lifetime, to just seeing how this advances. And I would just, again, kind of a charge to everybody on the call. Thank you for joining in, but also continue the conversation. Let's keep this going.
All right, real quick, Hans. Oops. Hold on, we'll let you go next. Hans.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who has been joining. It was a pleasure to have this panel session. I think what I would like to say is that it's great to be one of the pioneers and bring this to the next level, and we'll see where it all brings us. But I think this is a game-changing future in front of us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Denny. Go ahead. I know you want to jump in.
Okay, I'm starting. So just really many thanks to Kyoto organizers, to Jamie, to yourself, David, and to everyone joining us for keeping this discussion alive and giving the importance that geothermal deserves. And we are discussing this because we need a sustainable and environmental friendly resource. So I would like to call everyone, each member of the stakeholder groups, to support for a clean, sustainable, and decarbonized future that we can build together. Thank you.
And on purpose, I'm having Ken go last so he has the shortest amount of time to go over.
I would say don't listen to the pessimists and work with the pioneers, right? Push things forward, right? They're the ones who always push things forward. If we would just listen to the pessimists about how they're convinced closed loop geothermal won't work, we would never get anywhere as a society or as a planet. So push on. Keep working, keep making breakthroughs, and keep being optimistic and developing new things.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to each one of you for being a part of this. Thank you so much, Jamie, for giving us the opportunity and the platform to be able to come on here and to be able to put our thoughts and ideas out there in front of a larger audience. And for everybody out there that's watching to ask questions, please continue the conversation going. Please continue to interact with us offline from here. Let's continue to push things forward. This has been an absolutely amazing opportunity. We thank you all so very, very much. And as I like to always say, know your industry. And then we leave Electro. I don't know how we exit, but that was it. That was my